So my name is Anissa, for those of you who haven't met me before. I'm part of the Squiz New Zealand team, and I will be your host today for the webinar. We're very lucky to have a couple of people joining us from around the world. We've got the lovely Greg Costin, who is all the way from Canberra, our Funnelback expert, and he's going to be spending some time helping us understand the key considerations for planning an enterprise search, and give us some really cool examples and nice inspiring things that clients that he's been working with are already doing with Funnelback. We also have Jesse, who is in Seattle, and he's going to be part of the webinar also. He'll be helping us out with the technical things and making sure that the session is recorded so you can all have access to that afterwards. And if you have any colleagues who aren't able to attend today, they will be able to watch the session afterwards. So we're planning to run for about 30 minutes. We won't take up too much of your time, and we're going to make it interactive as much as we can as well. So the chat panel that I've been asking you guys to put little messages in and let us know who you are and where you're from. As we're going through the session, if you have any questions, things that pop into your mind that you'd like to have asked to the lovely Greg, just put those questions there in the chat window. And towards the end of the session, we're going to put some time aside where we can have a look at those questions, get your thoughts and ideas, and have a bit more interactive content. So feel free to do that. We might also open it up so you guys can ask some questions using the microphone, for those of you that have a microphone, if you want to. So just in terms of software and everything, I presume whoever's here is able to hear us. If you can't, if anything does drop out through the session, again, do use that chat window to let us know. We want to make this a really great experience for everybody to be able to hear clearly and use the functionality as it is intended. What have we got here? Webinar ID, the dial-in. So those of you who are trying to dial in, if there are any issues, yeah, just post them up there and we'll try to reply to that. So without too much further ado, we'll get us started. As I said, about half an hour or so, Greg's going to take us through some really exciting stuff, and then we're going to have some question and answers. So I can talk all day, but I will try not to. In fact, Jesse has the power to mute me. Jesse, feel free to mute me at any time. So I'll hand over to Greg and we'll get started. Greg, take it away.
Thanks, Anissa. Good morning, lovely people of New Zealand. It's a bit of a pleasure to be talking to you. Thank you for your time. Today, it's purely focused on government, searching government, funnelback in government. I'm going to try to make the session as interesting as possible to you. A fun fact about me is I actually began my career in government. I spent about 5 years there. Before I joined Funnelback, I was in the web publishing space. So a lot of what I'll be talking about is actually dear to me. I spent a lot of time trying to understand further, and sort of how I built my passion for search. Another fun fact about me is I actually began that career in the Australian Space Policy Unit, assessing grants for space applications, so tracking space junk and all sorts of stuff. So anyway, 2 seconds about me, but I'm going to crack on into it now. So I'm going to share my screen. And I trust you can all see this. The way I'm going to run today, I'm going to spend a little bit of time to begin with talking about the challenges delivering information in a government setting, which really shouldn't come as any surprise to you. You live and breathe this every day. But going into that, setting that context, looking at how search can really make an impact when it's used correctly. So to do that, we need to understand things like user intent. We need to get an understanding of how search can be used in times of change, and also how it might be able to support the content publishing process by way of either reducing risk, finding insights, or using it to automate the publishing process. When it comes to delivering information, one of the worst things that we can do is deliver an experience where someone is arriving and not finding what they want. That could be things like trying to register for a driver's license. It could be trying to download a form. The first challenge for any publisher, regardless of whatever industry they're in, is giving people the right answer at the right time. Specifically in a government setting though, there's other challenges. And I think government in itself is quite unique in the sense that citizens and in fact a whole range of other stakeholders have lofty expectations by way of what information they get and when they get it. Everyone is after instant gratification by way of finding information. They don't like to spend as a long time trying to do simple tasks, particularly when they're transactions. There's also a proliferation now of content, data, and platforms that we need to contend with. So we are in a stage where content and platforms in particular proliferate to a point where we're trying to do backpedaling and trying to consolidate as much as possible. So understanding how search can help in that process. We've got open information open information depending on the quality of search. So to make information as open as possible, we need to have pretty decent quality search engine behind the scenes. There's also a lack of readiness for new technology. That can be by way of systems internally within government, procurement processes getting in the way, but also things like the adoption of artificial intelligence, machine learning. A lot of those come with caution. So we need to contend with these when we think about information delivery. So how do we then deliver information in a better way when we're facing these types of challenges? We've got the content management wrapped up. I think we've come to a point where understanding how we use CMSs and manage them for website purposes is fairly well known. It's a known quantity. And we can use those effectively to create content, to design information architectures. But I think there's still a lot to be done by way of search. And when we look at how much of a utility search is, in the fact that some studies suggest that 60 to 70% of people rely on it as a primary form of navigation, we need to really know that it's delivering the right answer. And we need to unlock that potential. So how do we do this? The first step to doing so is understanding user intent. Now, search it's an interesting piece of technology in that it's really easy to gauge intent because people are essentially telling you what they want. However, we need to still understand a few basics about the people that we're serving information for. So who are our primary stakeholders? Are they a section of the populace? Are they internal stakeholders? There's a whole range of those. So we need to understand who they are. We need to understand what type of information that they need and the type of information that they expect. And we also need to know roughly when they're looking for it, because these user intents can change over time. And if we're using a technology that can't keep pace with that, usually it lends to a poor experience and degrading experience over time. So the good thing about search, as I mentioned, is that it can give us a lot of useful information about what people look for. And this can also be at odds with what we might expect someone to be finding and looking for. For those of you on this webinar who use Funnelback, obviously these tools are sort of readily available to you by way of our marketing dashboard. So understanding things like trends over time, what people are searching for, but also what they're searching for and not finding. These are all critical clues for understanding user intent. But it's not the only place that you can gauge this. There are tools like Google Analytics and other analytics packages, and there are also other SEO tools. So when we talk about search, we can also talk about it from an external search perspective, how people find information on Google. And it's something that I'd like to share with you, and it's not Funnelback specific, but I think it's actually a really great tool that everyone should be aware of. It's called Answer the Public. It's a free tool, and it allows you to type in a keyword and sort of understand how people might search for it. I like to show this as a way of introducing user intent, because a simple concept like driver's license can have many, many different intents behind it. So people wanting to know, which driver's license do they need? Can a driver's license be used as a right to work? There's lots of different intents that can be gauged off one single topic. So a tool like this can actually really help you understand the information needs of people coming to your website beyond the tools that might be readily available to you. But when it comes to intent, it's great to have these analytics, but we need to keep in mind that different people might be searching for the same thing and expect different results from that. And it's a really challenging thing to be able to cater to, because understanding sort of what is the right answer at the right time is sort of dependent on the person who is searching. An example of that, so previous role working at the business.gov.au website, an issue that we faced was people coming and looking for information on exporting. And it was really difficult to gauge, are they looking for grants? Are they looking for people who can advise them on exporting content? Are they looking for news? Or were they looking for events? And all of this content was available on the site, but it's really tricky to guide people to the right place at the right time. And the approach that we took, probably wrongly at the time, was to direct people to different landing pages across the site, as opposed to giving them a single source of truth that they could find everything that they need in sort of an intuitive way. So to find grants, you had to go to a grant finder. To find advice, you had to go to an advice finder, rather than giving them an all-encompassing experience, which is what the search technology is actually capable of doing when it's done right. With that, with all this intent and all this knowledge, we can actually do some really useful things. So we can discover where our content gaps are, what people might be searching for that we don't cater to, and perhaps where we need to guide them on a journey. And that can be across departments too. So just because you don't serve the content that someone is expecting to find, doesn't mean you can't guide them to that right path. That, in a sense, is also delivering on the expectations of the user, regardless of whether you're publishing it or not. But it ultimately will improve content searchability if you understand what someone is looking for. So with all of that said, who's doing this well? Who's an example of a Funnelback customer who can actually, who recently been a good example of content discoverability and understanding user intent to improve the process? So I'm going to bring you to now a few examples. I'm going to start with the Queensland Government Chief Information Office. And the reason I bring this up is the way in which they try to guide people down various avenues once they've arrived at their homepage. So obviously search is front and center. It's really hard to miss. But they have an idea already of what people might be searching for, and they try to make this as easy as possible. Now, this can be fed in by analytics, just an understanding that people coming to this particular site might be after career advice, contact information. But when it comes to the search box itself, so I can start typing in graduate, and you can see that we're suggesting information from various streams within the site. The purpose of this is that whole notion of not really knowing what someone could be after and try to cater to that from the point of search to guide them down the right track. So someone's searching for, say, a graduate program. We can give them information from a news section, from an events, or we can guide them straight to a search page and deliver them a pretty intuitive experience. So from here, we can also make things very easy to understand from a UI perspective, UX perspective, sorry, and give them the tools that they need to either filter by their intent, be it by document type, category, and so on. So a nice clean example where, in this case, the QG-CIO has sort of examined what their users are really after and try to make an interface and a search experience that caters to it. Expanding off of that example, where we're trying to capture someone from an initial point of search, I'm going to bring you to a next example. Now, it's not government, and you may have seen this example before, but I think it's a good case of bringing people to the right destination early on with an understanding of what they're looking for. The reason why I bring Linked up as well is because they share some similarities with government in that people come to them expecting a really quick and easy transaction. They don't want to spend an amount of time longer than what they need to in order to get something done. So the experience from search perspective needs to be really quick and easy. So what I'm going to demonstrate here is the on-focused concierge search that we have. So from the point of clicking on the search button, we are given a range of options from popular searches through to categories, with the idea being that it gives it an easy avenue for people to either buy a pass, manage their accounts, information on toll roads, etc. But it then still ties in with the autocomplete that Funnelback provides too. So in a government setting, I think this is actually a really quick and easy win for any particular website, particularly those that you know what people are coming to you for. It could be to purchase a pass, it could be to download a particular form, or it could be searching for a topic which is quite timely and in the news. So guiding people to a destination as quickly as possible without them having to go through a list of search results. Then we come to an example like Indiana. So the state of Indiana, their main government portal encompasses a lot of various departments across the state, and it's basically the landing page to any information, any government information from the Indiana domain. So there's a lot of different intents that they're trying to cater for here, be it through a different range of stakeholders. They've got industry, they've got citizens and residents, they've got other government agencies, people coming in. So they need to find an easy way to bring people in. So similarly, like they try to draw attention to a lot of popular topics people are trying to search for. If I go and type in something like jobs, what we come to is a page that, again, tries to capture all of these different intents, but in a way that trying to makes it easy to unearth the right information for the right person. So beginning with promoted results, easy way to draw attention to various, in this case, career opportunity and job sites within their domain. And even still, we have a range here. So from veterans through to job training and employment opportunities, sort of understanding that they've got a different spectrum of people coming to them looking for that same information. So we need to cater to that in any way possible. So even with promoted results here, you'll notice on the right-hand side of the page, we've got split out some FAQs. So we can unearth sort of popular questions that might have been raised by people, particularly useful for a broad query like this, like jobs. People, in some cases, if they're on a mobile or on a desktop, still typically write with 2 to 3 keywords, but realistically they might have the intent of finding information on why provide jobs to offenders, or how do I apply for a job within the state. Similarly, we can start to group out web pages, documents, and news and events. So the great thing about this functionality within Funnelback is what we call extra search, is try to capture that intent without trying to cloud the search results. So often when we've got a broad range of content types and we're trying to merge everything together into a set of search results, typically we start to lose a lot of the context, or things get buried further down in results. It makes it really hard to find. If we can group things in a logical order, we can provide special focus to them. So things like FAQs in particular are a great source, because a lot of the time people will search for information which is catered to through an FAQ. So why not highlight that separately with the ability to search over a full range if needed. The next example as well sort of caters to that using the same concept. So I'm on the Therapeutic Goods Administration website at the moment. And for this department, for this agency, sorry, they have a broad range of information and data available to them, some of which is not published on the website, but people still expect to find that information. So I've typed in Panadol. Now, For the Therapeutic Goods Administration, they manage a register of therapeutic goods. Essentially, it's a database, and it's all managed internally within the organisation, and it's not published as such on the website. But their users still expect to find this information. So the way in which they get around that is by providing it within search. So someone coming to search for Panadol, what we've got here are the top 3 results coming back from that register, with all website results provided underneath. And these can be things for like alerts and anything that's sort of exempt from regulation. This piece here at the top with the register, so Funnelback taps into that, even though it's an internal source. It means we can create a bridge between offline and online content and make offline content searchable. So it's often a really good opportunity from an open information and content discoverability perspective to look at what information you store internally and how could it potentially be unearthed in search. Because what you'll find is that you end up creating a better experience for your stakeholders and also reducing costs as well, diverting people away from more expensive sources like call centers and email. Now, this wouldn't be complete without a local government example. I've brought this in again from a perspective of how do we deliver into different information from the point of search. So a different perspective on query autocomplete, and in this case bringing in events and news, and from a broad range of different topics and content from this local government in the UK. The final example I've got for user intent is an interesting one from the ACT government, so local government for me. They basically created information to satisfy a user need, realising that people were often coming to the call line, the ACT government call line, looking for information on assistance that they might have available to them, be it through energy rebates, be it through discounts for public transport. And it's a really common need, particularly with specific sections of the community. So what they wanted to do was create a savings finder where you can plug in your details about who you are and sort of attributes about you. So almost like a guided search in a way, where I can say, look, I'm renting a home. I'm aged between 18 and 60. And I continue on this path down 11 questions, just saying more and more about myself. And at the end, we end up getting a list of incentives that are available to me. And Funnelback is being used here to help craft a query, which will bring back the right results for this particular person. So it's almost like a personalized approach to finding information, where I can guide someone down a particular path and end up saying, you are eligible for these particular forms of assistance, and here's how you go about receiving those assistance. So just because people are searching for things that may not exist, it doesn't necessarily mean that search can't play a part in that. In this case, all it took was an Excel sheet filled with different forms of assistance and the different application criteria for receiving them. From that, we can create an experience like this quite easily. Okay, coming back to this. So we've examined user intent, but one of the common things in government is change is constant, and change can come in many different formats. It can come from changes in government, departments splitting off and merging together, which changes the nature of the information and their purpose in society. There's also public interest events. There are things like the release of budgets, there's changes in ministers, political events, and all of these can have an impact on the type of information that people might need at any point in time. And there's also things like updating your digital presence. So website migrations, consolidations, and even rewriting of content can all change the type of information that you create for your audiences, and also gives you a chance to sort of review and understand where your gaps might fall. So I'm going to go straight into another example here, and it's a client of mine that I've been working with for the Department of Health. They recently went live with their new website, health.gov.au, and it was a replacement of a previous website, also on health.gov.au, which was on a IBM platform. So they re-platformed to GovCMS, which is built on Drupal. And in doing that process, they rewrote essentially all of the content available to them. When they did this migration and replaced the GovCMS site with, replaced the Notes site with GovCMS, they ended up moving the Notes website, the IBM website, to a different domain. So what that led to was two different places, health.gov.au and www.1.health.gov.au, of places that you could find information. Now, they obviously want to bring people to the new home of the department, but at the same time, they hadn't had enough resources and time to bring absolutely everything across. So what they've got at the moment is a situation where their migration has led to two homes for content. The idea being is that gradually over time, the content that's still on WW1, the old website, will move across. But from a search perspective, people are still landing on health.gov.au and expecting the same information. So if we were to, or if they were to leverage an out-of-the-box search solution, typically what they would get is searching only over the new website, which is not a great experience for them. So if I were to go search for something like vaccines, we've got a few things happening here. So Funnelback has created two separate indexes and allowed them to search across both. So the ability to refer to new and old health content gives them an overarching view over what's available to them, and then further ability to highlight what's on an older website and what's on the current one, so that once people click on a result and they are led to a jolting experience of a different look and feel, there's sort of some context as to why that's occurring. So a good example where you might have change underway, and search kind of needs to play a part in that, because it's an important aspect of delivering the right information at the right time. And regardless of where that information sits, we still sort of need to unearth it, but we need to do it in a way that's a smooth experience for each user, regardless of what their expertise is in using search. They're always finding the right info at the right time. Okay, now this is probably the more interesting aspects of Funnelback. So a lot of what I've spoken about so far is search kind of as we know it. It's, you type in a question and receive an answer, maybe with the exception of the savings finder, which is a bit more guided approach. You're not typing anything in, you're just selecting what you associate yourself with. But search can also play an important part in the content publishing space. Important because it can reduce risks and also help you with finding insights that can be sort of fed back into the content design process, help you improve the quality of content, and also identify gaps as well. Risk is an interesting one though. Obviously with the case of New Zealand Treasury recently, it sort of highlighted the risk of a search that's been implemented and maybe not controlled to the point where it enabled them to remove things from an index. So that ability to remove unwanted pages quickly and easily and without technical resources is fairly important. And you can see that when it goes wrong, it can go wrong spectacularly. But we also wanted to use search and the underlying technology to detect potential issues that might arise. And these can include detecting things like sensitive data. It could be the unexpected publishing of credit card details, of contact details, email addresses, phone numbers, staff names, and so on. But also from an optimistic perspective, using it to discover trends, using it to understand over time what people might be looking for, and how those trends change as well, maybe how the language changes. Perfect example is when people start to use different terminology to what you're using internally. So then looking to how you match that up. Before I go on, just to show an example of those. So those of you who already have Funnelback, you'll obviously know the marketing dashboard behind the scenes, but you may not know how easy it is to control a lot of the search experience. So in the case where we need to remove results within the curator tool itself, we have the ability to set up trigger groups, essentially tells Funnelback when to operate a particular rule, and then the actions that can take place. Now, for one of those actions, we have an easy option to remove a specific result, in amongst other options to help you promote content. We might want to remove things. So by plugging in the exact URL for the page that you want to remove, you can simply enter it in here, hit add and publish, and immediately that page is removed from results. So often handy for embargoing content, things that you might have available on the site, but you probably don't want them to be searchable just yet. And when you combine that with the flexibility of a date-based rule, you can control when and where information is available to someone. So a handy little tip for those of you who are already using Curator. And on the insights side, Content Auditor is an inbuilt tool. For those of you who aren't aware of Funnelback's suite of optimization tools, the Content Auditor provides a bit of insight into the content that we index, regardless of where it's published. So you could be publishing across many different websites, as is the case here. So in this case, we've got a broad range of different websites. We're showing about 100,000 different URLs. We can start to track how search has indexed each of those and where content might lie. So it can give you some perspective as to where you are storing information, the different platforms that you might be using, but also things that can inhibit someone from truly understanding the content that you're writing, be it from an accessibility perspective, or even things like reading grade. So being able to judge just how readable your content is using a score, which is based off the Flesch-Kincaid model. So essentially the level of education you need, the grade level, to understand the piece of content. So 8th grade level of education, 9th grade, and so on. But the usefulness of the tool is varied. So you can use it to detect undesirable text, be it from a typo perspective or something a bit more custom to you. So this could be used for the detection of people's names, numbers that follow a credit card format, numbers that follow a phone number format. So you can sort of monitor from a search perspective what people could potentially find that you might not want them to find as well. Great. And then there's the automation side of things. So this is where probably the true power of Funnelback comes. In Funnelback's ability to gather data from multiple sources across multiple platforms, there is an inbuilt ability to publish information onto those platforms and other platforms based off information Funnelback's gathered. So the idea being is that you can manage information where it lies, be it from an internal database, be it from a third-party software, but then use that information and publish it automatically to different sources, be it a website or a mobile app. Particularly useful when there are some tedious publishing tasks involved. It might be simply updating the news and events section of an app or a website. Things that can take someone, half an hour to do, can be driven by something like search and be instantly updated once the source is updated. Further to that, we can also look at how we can create search-driven pages and use that as well across channels. So, talks well in theory. So how does that look like? Who's doing this well? A few examples that I think are doing it quite well. I'm going to start with the Grains Research and Development Corporation. So they have people from a range of places throughout Australia looking to them for information on grains, so how they can better improve their yield, improve the safety of their crops. And they manage a lot of this information in a static way, but there are quite a few areas within the site which they try to automate to the greatest degree possible. So within here, for example, research and trials and areas of investment, I can look at the different areas of investment that they have. And what I get guided to is a search-driven experience for anything matching nutrition investment. So this is a highly guided search. It's sort of scoping down to a specific type of information that means that I'm always receiving the right information at the right time. And we can also use that within a web page too. So in this case, looking at sort of the final reports that they publish, each report has a summary. Now this is stored external to the CMS, hence why Funnelback provides a great tool to link and automate two different systems together and provide things like search functionality within this page too. So if we want to filter by a certain region, we can do that. And we can also use this for a degree of personalization too. So it means that for GRDC, they don't need to come in and update this page separately to the original source. It's just immediately updated once they've published these reports separately. In a similar vein, the Department of Treasury have sections of their website which contains related consultations. Now, for an author to come in and manually update these and in a timely fashion, so bearing in mind that each has a specific close date, can be quite cumbersome and prone to error. So what Funnelback does here is provides essentially the top 3 consultations relating to a particular topic. So in this case, our topic is banking and finance. We can provide these in a variety of formats, be it through raw HTML, through to something like a JSON response. But it means that for the Treasury, they can determine exactly what returns back under what criteria, and controlling things like date ranges, things that have been closed or might be currently open for consultation too. So automating that publishing process as much as possible. And then we go to the far end of the extreme, is the Change for Life site from the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK. This is a campaign site that they created. And even though this just looks like a normal web page with a series of cards, behind the scenes, Funnelback's actually doing quite a bit of heavy lifting here. So the information that they receive is sort of managed separately to this platform. And Funnelback provides a lot of the content that you see here, from things like the recipes cards through to some of the food facts as well. Now, the styling and the presentation of this information is controlled by the website itself, but it relies on Funnelback to deliver that information to it so it can style it. It means that they don't need to manage this information on the platform. They can manage it in their other marketing platforms. But just to give you an example of how dynamic and how visually engaging search-driven content can be. Great. Well, that brings me close to the end of my chat with you. So just to wrap up some of the things I've discussed. Obviously, government's in a unique space. You've got unique challenges by way of expectations that people are bringing, the type of user intent that people might have, and also the type of content and data and platforms that are available to you, and the various levels of quality within that too. So that we have a good understanding of how web content can be published using CMSs and websites, there's a lot of potential that can still be reached through the power of search when it's used correctly. So what I encourage you to do following this, if you're not already using Funnelback, or even if you are, just to reach out. If you've got existing challenges and you're just in need of a better approach to delivering that information in a way that's sort of seamless to your customers. But I'm going to hand back over now to you, Anissa, and we're going to run any questions that might have popped up.
Cool. Thanks, Greg. Love those examples, especially seeing the way that you can use Funnelback to control content and push it through different sources and have that dynamically populated. So of course, I'm busy thinking about all different ways that some of our clients can use that, and hopefully those of you listening are doing the same.